The Mediary project deals with the training of trainers, and from the very beginning it was clear that we had to develop methodological proposals for very demanding people. The practitioners in restorative justice are very sensitive to the issue of involving all the people in the activities, and this is really important. Involving everyone is quite easy when doing exercises, especially if you do things, or if you have to move around, or if you have to participate in a role play. Involvement is not very difficult to achieve. It is more difficult to keep people active when it comes to listen to theoretical content. Certainly there are very good speakers who are able to capture our attention, but at other occasions staying awake during a presentation is really difficult. This is not the only problem. In listening to a presentation, however, there are other kinds of problems. In fact, the main is the assimilation of the contents. A lecture that lasts half an hour or 40 minutes usually offers a lot of information and reflection, and we cannot assimilate all these things. Or better, we cannot assimilate them when we are listening. In fact, most of the time we take notes. Actually, there are people who do not this, who think they can store everything in their memory, and they decided not to write anything. But if after a couple of days you ask these people to tell you the details of a reasoning they heard, it is very difficult for them to do it. The problem is that people who take notes are not much advantaged. Perhaps this is also your experience. You have been to a seminar, you have taken 10 pages of notes, and you have promised yourself to review them at home more calmly. 9 times out of 10 it is likely that then you fail to do so. In my library there are a lot of piles of folders from conferences full of notes on many interesting things which I have never found the time to review. The time available to us is the real problem. So one very important thing was to find a way to help people to include in their training time also the time for assimilating content. A second challenge that needed to be addressed was that of managing debates on contents or sharing of contents. We can deal with all these problems with a good time management, but above all we must understand well the relationship between listening, silence, writing and reading. On this, I would like to tell you a few things before I tell you how we have taken them into account to create the activity proposals concerning the thematic insights. Slowness and limited information are good friends of our processing capacity. Instead, we mostly live in a hurried and information-overloaded world. The learning of theoretical content in training often follows the same dynamic, a lot of content in a short time. A good assimilation process, on the other hand, requires being able to stay for a while on a single content, on a specific information, on a particular line of reasoning. When we work in this way, what happens is that initially we seem to get nowhere. But then, if we ask the right questions within ourselves, what we already know comes out. If we give ourselves more time, the new things we encounter react with our experiences and turn into words within us, into new questions, into curiosity, into connection. To stimulate our inner parliament and generate reflexivity, it is enough to introduce a few new things at a time. So in a training, it is essential to provide times of silence. It is also essential if we plan a debate or a sharing. If there is a good time for personal work first, then what we share will be much more intense, much more connected with life and experience. This power of the words that we discover in silence is amplified when we encounter them in a written form. This is something the ancient religious realized. Initially, the stories were transmitted orally, but then they thought it could be useful to fix them in writing. It was not to avoid forgetting them. It was because they discovered that a small written text, also a fragment, was capable of stimulating inner attention, was capable of generating words and questions within us. So a second important element in training is the possibility of noting down something that does not come only from the presentation we heard, but from the time of silence. What made us think, what proposes a change, is the real fruit of learning. This is why it is important to fix it in a short writing. It will serve us for the future. It will also serve us for any following dynamic of sharing or debating. If after a presentation we want to discuss it with a speaker, then it is much better not to start with a debate straight away. It is better to give people time to listen to each other inwardly. And for example, to focus on a singular question. If everyone writes down that question, we are already certain that everyone will have something to ask, and that there will be no monopoly of attention. But above all, we are certain that that question arises from a genuine need to deepen, from a genuine need to understand. If on the other hand, after a presentation we want to share impressions in a circle, again it's very helpful to have thought individually first and to have written something down. In a sharing circle we can notice some interesting dynamics. Perhaps you have been in a circle immediately after listening to someone, and perhaps these things have happened also to you. If you were among the first to start, you said the first things that come to your mind. But perhaps then you realized that you would have preferred to propose something else, the hurry preventing you from reflecting. If you are among the last to speak, it is likely that someone before you said something similar to what you wanted to share. When this happens, we do two things. First, we stop listening to others and look for a different thing to say. Second, when we speak, we say that we don't want to repeat things that are already said and with which we agree. So we will add something else. And this reaction is a loss of content, not an increase. In group sharing, it is very interesting to observe precisely the repetitions. In the things that are remarked upon by several people, there are often insights that are important for a group. Repetitions help to grasp the most important issues for a group. If we avoid them, we lose a lot of richness. If you sometimes experienced something similar, you can better appreciate the methodology that I am now telling you about, and that we have chosen for some of the activity sheet proposals. Imagine now you had 20 minutes of silence to understand what the presentation moved inside you. Imagine that you and the other people involved are invited to focus on the same kind of content. I mean, a need, a lack of information, a new insight, a wish of change, or something similar. Imagine also that you have written down your specific content in a few words, as the fruit of your time of silence. Now you stand in a circle and the sharing begins. Imagine what you simply have to do is reading that little written note, without adding anything else, no additional explanation. Well, first of all, it is an exercise in trust between people. I am proposing a thought to you and I do not bother to explain why it arose within me. I simply tell you what in today's work got my attention. If I limit myself to read what I've written, my intervention in the circle will be intense, but also brief. All the intervention will be more or less the same length. There will be not those who speak for 10 minutes and those who speak for 30 seconds. Everyone will take more or less 1 minute. If I have already fixed the content to share, I don't have to worry about thinking about it while others are talking. I can listen and concentrate on listening. Also, I can be at the beginning of a circle or at the end, and it doesn't change. The content we share has all emerged earlier, in the dedicated time of silence. If I already have the content at hand, I don't have to worry if someone shares something similar beforehand. The words will never be the same, and the repetition will help to grasp more details. What we tried to do through the activity sheets is to work out a method to bring into training the potential of silence, of inner listening, of writing, of sharing questions or content that arise from meditation and not from improvisation. This also leads to reducing the time of presentation or inputs. 20-30 minutes within a 2-hour activity is enough. Alternating the different moments, listening, personal reflection, writing, sharing, also gives a lot of rhythm to the work, and it's really difficult to get bored. Concluding a training by taking a small personal written evaluation is then the best way to fix the contents and to be able to come back to them as a step in one's own training. This methodology derives from the discernment in community courses that I have been designing for several years, also with a group of hundreds of people, in which the participation of all is fundamental. We hope that the adaptation we have created within the Mediorai project can be useful, and of course we are interested in all suggestions to make it better. Thank you for your attention.